financial crisis recovery.
Foreclosure, short sales, bankruptcy, credit card debt, job loss, depreciating home values, money management. Peace of mind when it comes to your finances seems completely out of reach under current conditions, but there is a way to achieve it. For the next 60 minutes, you're going to find out how to cover your assets. Cover your assets.
$100 a month, you're right back to $1,500 a month, and renting isn't going to fix anything. Wow. And by the way, when you do walk away from the house and rent, you won't have the protection afforded you under foreclosure law that enables you to stay in a house for an entire year to gather yourself up financially and prepare for the next move. Likewise, when you walk away, you'll also have $70,000 or $80,000 in credit card debt that you still have. And if you have a second mortgage, you'll also have that to contend with. Are you sure that walking away from your home is the answer to your problem? You see, but these are things, it's hard to explain something like that to somebody because they don't know what they don't know. So there's a lot of things to consider. So when a person has IRS debt, if they have state revenue debt, I'll tell you that the people who have those types of debts have problems that go beyond somebody with credit card debt, at least potentially. IRS debt is non-dischargeable. And if you're interested in this or you know anybody who is, you need to write this down. IRS debt is dischargeable in bankruptcy once it is 3 tax years old, meaning that you filed timely, on time, and it's been 24 months at least since you have filed those taxes. If that is the case, IRS debt is in fact dischargeable. So option 1 is to pay all the money. Option 2 is to negotiate a percentage of what is owed. And option 3 is to file bankruptcy and discharge the debt. Now, why is that relatable to IRS debt, student loan debt, and SBA loans? Well, let's very quickly make a rundown. IRS debt is not dischargeable in a bankruptcy. And offer and compromise, which many people turn to when they have federal debt, is something that you'll hear, all these folks who were former IRS agents and, they're from New Jersey and they can negotiate your IRS debt. Well, the first thing you need to know going in before you enter into that and build a strategy around it, and something I want to say, when I work with my clients, we don't ever build strategies around things that have low levels of probability. If you're in the military and you're going to make a decision, a strategy around the fact that you've got a 50-50 probability, but you've got no backup plan, tell me, when people's lives are at stake, would that be absurd? Isn't it interesting how many people will make decisions exactly like that and don't see the absurdity in the decision that they've made? Meaning there's less than a 50% chance of probability, but I've got no backup plan because I've just got to make it work, yet you have no control over it because the bank is the one who's going to decide. You understand how ridiculous that is? And that's what people do all day, every day. Well, let me tell you a little bit about offer and compromise as it relates to federal debt. 1% of all offer and compromises that are submitted will be approved. Less than 1%. So, when you consider offer and compromise with the federal government, you should know that your chances of success are very little, and you better have a backup plan that's also going to address your problem. Otherwise, you're going to be left feeling demoralized in the process. You've got to know the numbers before you go in. That doesn't mean you don't try, but you must understand what you're entering into. If you're dealing with the IRS, I'll tell you every day of the week, the IRS typically is easier to deal with than our state Minnesota revenue when it comes to revenue debt. So the IRS is actually easier to deal with. I got a guy who's got $25,000 that he owes the state of Minnesota. He pays them nearly $1,000 a month. I got another guy who's got $1.2 million worth of IRS debt and pays $150 a month, if that tells you anything. So IRS debt can be dischargeable if it's 3 years of age, if you filed your taxes on time in those tax years, and if it's been at least 24 months since the time that you filed the taxes and completed the taxes. Student loan debt. Student loan debt is non-dischargeable. That is pretty much the end of the story. It is non-dischargeable. However, you need to be very careful with student loan debt, because if you consolidate student loan debt, wherein they take your federal debt and some consolidation company buys that debt from the federal government, they are able to maintain the protection of non-dischargeability. However, once it is purchased by someone else, no longer do you have your protections of 4, 6, 7% interest rates on these loans. And that means that if you break the performance of a student loan that has been consolidated and the debt has been purchased by a debt company who now is taking your payments on 3, 4 accounts that you settle or that they bought, and now they've consolidated them, do you know that if you miss one single payment, that is unsecured debt, and although it's non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, they can take the interest rate from what you thought was a guaranteed 6, 7% or what have you, and they can bring that rate all the way up to the maximum usury, which in Minnesota is 32.9%. So student loan debt is something you need to be very cautious of, and you need to know everything before you go into it. Next one, SBA loans. SBA loans. These are Small Business Administration loans. Many people starting businesses look to the SBA for guarantees so that a bank who would otherwise not give them a loan will now give them a loan because of the SBA guarantee under the federal government. When that business fails, it can be disastrous because negotiating SBA loans is enormously challenging. The best you can probably assume you'll do on an SBA loan on an upfront lump sum deposit to settle, meaning, okay, I owe them $100,000. The best you will probably do is 50 cents on the dollar, and you need to know that. So if it takes 50 cents on the dollar to negotiate an SBA loan and you just went out of business and have lost everything as a result, you can well imagine how likely it is that you're going to have the money to do that unless you liquidate retirement accounts or borrow money from other people. So SBA loans can be very challenging. So giving you a broad overview of what we're going to talk about today. When we come back from our break, we're going to be talking about IRS, state and revenue debt, some of the things that you need to know, the people that you need to see if you have that, and then we'll roll from each one, IRS, then we'll get in more depth in the following segment on student loan debt and the one thereafter on SBA loans. So be right back talking about IRS and state and local revenue debt. Good morning. We're back. Cover your assets. Talking about federal debt and how to handle it, how to deal with it, what to know about it. And, if you're considering getting these loans, if you're considering entering into putting a kid in college, if you're going to, applying for student loans and the things that you need to know and the pitfalls when things go bad. Because, nothing ever goes wrong until it does, right?
What?
Nothing ever goes wrong until it does. And that's
correct.
And that's what everybody's worried about all the time. It's a situation where when it happens, wow, I never saw this coming, because everybody goes into everything expecting that nothing will go wrong. And my world is all about when everything goes wrong. So I expect everything to go wrong all the time. And I believe that if you plan and anticipate that, then you know exactly how to deal with it when and if it does happen. And you also know how to position yourself to ensure that it doesn't. So these are the things that you really need to know. Some of you heard me talking about my own personal story earlier. I want to encourage you. I had a gentleman in who just contracted us to become a client yesterday, and he said, I downloaded the Financial Crisis Bible, and he said I felt like you were talking to me. He said it was just a powerful piece of information that really gave me a lot of insight, and it obviously makes when I meet with somebody a meeting much more productive because they have a basis of understanding. It goes in depth into many of these different things. So if you're considering things like short sale and loan modification and credit counseling and bankruptcy or whatever you're dealing with, it'll provide you with a ton of insight on how to negotiate and what to do and the things that you need to be concerned with and considering. So by all means, download that. You can go to and find that by going to CYA21.com and downloading the Financial Crisis Bible. You can also find it by simply going to financialcrisisbible.com. But we always encourage you to go to CYA21.com because some of the practitioners I'm going to mention here in just a moment you'll also be able to find on that website, and certainly can contact us and get the information you're looking for. Also, too, want to encourage all of you to call in if you have questions regarding this as I talk about this. Feel free to pick up the phone, give me a call, and we can talk about the issues that are poignant and significant to you. That number is 651-646-8255. Again, that number, 651-646-8255. Feel free to give us a call here at ESPN at Cover Your Assets. Love to hear your questions and see if I can't be of help to you. So now back to it. IRS debt. People come in and they've got student loan debt. they've got IRS debt, they've got SBA loans, and they are seeking my help. And maybe at the time that I sit down with them, they're sitting there talking about foreclosure and short sale, or they're talking about credit card debt, but they don't understand that they've got other issues besides that. And that's why when a person sits down with me, I have them fill out a 14-page discovery document so that I can gather up all the pertinent information, things that they don't think are even important. It's ironic the number of people who will come to me and not fill out the form and tell me, we don't need to fill all this out. I've just got two simple, straightforward questions, and I'll pay you your $250 an hour to answer them, but I don't need all this other stuff. And within 5 minutes of getting into their situation, we find out that they absolutely do need all of this other stuff. But they don't think they do, because they think their situation is simple and straightforward. But the way they'll be looked at and the multitudes of other things that they have going on are very much at issue. So when you look at a person's situation,